and because we want to give the opportunity for other people to be able to see the presentation as someone could attend. And just to clarify, we also have a BSL interpreter, so you can find him on the participants list. His name is Matthew Banks, and you can pinch him on the screen. So the structure of this event is quite simple. We will start the presentation of Disability Bar, so you can learn more about us, and then we will move on to our four amazing guest speakers. We will start with His Honorary Judge Fayez Absta, CBE, and then we will move on with a discussion from Christina Warner from Gothic Chambers, who is a family trustee of Disability Bar, and then we will have the pleasure for Daniel Holt, a future pupil at 39 Essex Chambers, and Daniel Taylor to discuss as well. Then we will have a Q&A session where you'll be able to ask questions to the committee. And I would like, before we start on the presentation, to have a quick poll in order for us to be able to see who is in this room and learn more about the attendees, if that's okay. James, can you launch the poll, please?
That is
I will
right.
give it one. Perfect. I will give it 1 minute for the poll to launch. Perfect. So we can share. Can you share the result, James? Let's see with you. Can you share them or not?
Sorry, what have I done?
Can you share the results of the poll, please?
Yes, all right.
So we can see we have a quite big number of aspiring barristers, trustees, and other people joining, and barristers, which is we're very excited about. However, I would like to now take this opportunity and ask for James A. Dean, Vice Chair of Disability Bar and co-founder, Maria Molina, the head of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, Charles Taylor, the head of research, and Ms. Brown to introduce themselves, because without them, we won't be able to be in this position today. So can you start, James, by introducing yourself before we move the presentation?
Hello, yeah, I'm James Eakin. I'm Vice Chair, bringing disability to the bar. I have a multiple of disabilities. So I have a brain condition called hydrocephalus, which means I have a little box in the back of my head that keeps me alive. I'm also epileptic. And yes, it's a pleasure to be here with you all tonight.
Right, would you like to go next?
Hello, my name is Maria Munir. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the head of Equity, Diversity and Inclusion. I was born with facial paralysis, which paralyzed the left side of my face. And I also had ADHD, though I only found out recently. And I've also lived with some chronic pain conditions. So I'm really excited to be part of this organization.
And Charles, if you can introduce yourself, that would be great. And then Reese, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm Charles, I'm head of research here at Bringing Disability to the Bar. I have myalgic encephalomyelitis, which is a hidden disability, often called chronic fatigue syndrome. So I can't wait to get started. Thank you, Constantina.
And then Reese.
My name's Reese. I was once described by an expert as having a plethora of disabilities. I have epilepsy, I have myalgic encephalitis, I have borderline autistic spectrum disorder, I have a number of learning disabilities, and I am absolutely delighted to be here to this launch and be a part of this project.
Without the team, we won't be able to be here today, because what is very distinguished about Bringing Disability to the Bar is that each of us can bring something different in terms of experience, perspectives, digitalization, and hopefully to assist more disabled advisors. I think it's time now to start this presentation, which again, you can find a copy of it if you search on the chat box and you can download it there. So essentially, this presentation is an opportunity for you to get a better understanding of what bringing disability to the bar really is. We have an opportunity to meet our committee, hear from our vice chair, head of equity, diversity, inclusion, head of research, head of STEMs. We'll also learn more about core principles, aims, and how we function as an organization. You'll be able to ask questions about the things that you'll see in this presentation later on in the Q&A session. However, I would encourage all of you to try and ask questions on the chat, and our lovely secretary, Emily Freeman, will collect those questions so we can ask them later on. Also, since this event might include some certain experiences of individual disabilities, we would want to encourage everyone, if you need further support, to contact Mind if you consider trigger warming. So I would like now to ask Oscar to move to the next slide, if possible. So the agenda of this event starts with introduction of Bring Disability to the Bar and how this organization came about. Then James will take over and explain our agenda structure, our upcoming trustees and allies, our aims and how we plan to achieve those aims, in what ways. Maria will then discuss Bring Disability to the Bar, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Afterwards, Charles, as the head of research, will be discussing how the research team operates, research objectives, and current research projects, and what we hope to do in the first year of operation. Following Charles, which will be discussing Bring Disability to the Bar schemes, and in particular, mentorship and many privileges, which where we would like to see more support of you. James will then explain how education fits within Bring Disability to the Bar objectives, and then the position will be come to an end, and we will move on for guest speakers. So if I can have the next slide, that would be great, Oscar. Amazing. So you can see the slides, a tweet that took place on the 1st of August 2021, so last summer. This organization started from this very simple tweet, where I asked the advisors to come together and form a network from organization in order to see significantly increase accessibility, inclusivity, and support for disabled advisors. The response that this post received was simply extraordinary. I never thought that after a very frustrating experience that I had to experience in coming to the bar, that 60 people would be interested to discuss with me, creating a networking organization. This hope and enthusiasm really motivated me to try and approach more people to sign up for an organization. After many meetings, I met James, and then with James, we managed to recruit more and more people. And then Maria was, and 28 more amazing people came on board, and we created this organization. So the formation of the bar came in. When I first made this post, you can see on the slide that the name was different. It was Inspiring Voices with Disabilities. However, once the committee was formed, we found our forever name, which is Bring Disability to the Bar. We chose this name in particular as we want to speak openly and visibly about being disabled and bring to the surface what being disabled at the bar means, both for us as individuals and for the bar as a wider community, which we hope to join. When we say bring disabilities, that isn't to say that there aren't disabled bars at the bar already. Far from it. It's drawing to the attention the fact that we can't leave our disabilities outside the workplace, i.e. the bar. They are part of how we navigate every space. So our goal is that when still aspiring baristas enter the profession, we enter it secure in the knowledge that we shouldn't have to hide or compensate for any parameters. We want to achieve our full potential with support. And it's to me that regardless of the disabilities that contribute to daily struggles, we're still as able to do the jobs that the people with no disabilities can do in the profession. So we are shifting the narrative and trying to advocate that chambers, courts, and the judiciary must do more to change perceptions and physical barriers that stop us from realizing our full potential. I would like now to pass on the presentation to James, the vice chair of this organization. So Osman can change the slides. Thank you.
Hello, yes, I'm going to take you through now the Be the Bar team. We are a fabulous team, which is broken down into 9 sub-teams, ranging from our outreach team, which is led by Amaro Morrow, dealing with all things education, including liaising with schools, colleges, higher education institutions, and the Inns of Courts, all the way through to liaising with the blogging team, website, charities, and social media. You'll hear more about some of these sections of the committee, speaking with the research, EDI and schemes teams, who representatives are currently on the panel. Just to take you through some of these, so the blogging team will be working with outreach to tell the stories of some of those with disabilities, both at the bar and trying to get into it. If you head over to the Be the Bar website, you'll be able to see more of these, as well as a few that have been already posted, including about those on committee, including one that is of myself. And this is something which we'd like to actively support, is telling the story of those trying to get into the profession with a disability, and any barriers, struggles, aspirations, and even good things that they've received from the bar. And finally, on this point, all the contact details for the teams will be on a later slide in the presentation. Next slide, please. So as you can see there, we have our 3 amazing up and coming trustees, Mary Pryor QC, Alison Hunter QC, and Christina Warner. But as you'll see on the first comment there, we're currently applying to register as a charity with the Charity Commission, but are not quite there yet. So yeah, our future trustees are amazing supporters, which are Mary Pryor QC from the 36 group, Alison Hunter QC from 23 Essex Court, and Christina Warner from Goldsmith Chambers. Christina is on the panel as well later. You may have seen her name up there, so she'll speak a bit more about disability from her perspective. Our community is currently growing already, and also our network of allies with whom we couldn't do this without. We currently have serving judges, barristers, pupils, senior barristers, people from all over the profession wanting to support us as an ally. So if you would like to do this and would like to know more about this, again, you can find out more on our website, and there'll be contact details further on in the presentation. Can I have the next slide, please? I do appreciate, though, however, I do sound like Chris Whitty here. However, that's the way we're doing this. So yes, our objectives for bringing disability to the bar, there are 4 principal objectives here. As you can see there, dismantle barriers affecting disabled aspiring barristers, to raise awareness of the current practices are inadequate within the bar. This is to do with both attitudes, physical barriers to chambers, to courts, and also to do with changing the mentality of people aspiring to the bar who don't have disabilities or who do, and the way in which the profession needs to become more accessible to that. So it's the social barriers, the prejudicial barriers, structural barriers, and also the financial barriers that are part of the bar. The second part of what we want to do is to raise awareness that current practices are inadequate and changing how disabilities are perceived within the bar, as we feel there's a lack of understanding of intersectionality, and this is a fundamental barrier which is often and regularly forgotten within the bar. Fourthly, we have to open up the legal profession to see how we can open up to those with disabilities, to people who maybe don't have an idea about disabilities and how they affect people in this profession and in this line of work. And so we want to create an inclusive environment for people to be able to get involved with the bar, to think of it as a career that they'd like to pursue, and to enjoy that. Next slide, please. So yeah, how will we meet our targets? So we have 4 key points of how we will meet our targets. That's to develop a strong EDI policy. Now, we have used equity instead of equality. So Maria Munir will tell you more about that later on in their talk. The second part is via research. Thirdly, via disability and bringing disability to the bar schemes. And fourthly, via education. I will make my emphasis on education. This aspect is hugely important in all that we do. We want to educate the bar and work in partnership with chambers, individuals on disabilities, hidden and visible, and the effects of those practicing in the profession, and also a wider awareness on inclusivity and best practices at the bar. This is something which we will do in partnership with various chambers, bar associations, and we'll feel it's not just us as aspiring barristers who we think can learn from us, but those at the bar in the creation of a bar without barriers. Sorry. I will talk more on this in detail further on. Next slide, please.
So it's over to me. My name is
Yeah.
Maria Munir. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the head of EDI. And I joined bringing disability to the bar because it really gave me hope that there could be a more accessible path to the profession for people like me. So today, in the next few minutes, I won't be focusing on specific recommendations because a top-down approach won't be effective for all of us, but instead giving you an insight into our approach to equity, diversity, and inclusion. So together we can focus on achieving that collaboratively. So turning then to the first pillar, equity, on the next slide. So for us, equity is not just about equality of opportunity. In the same way that there is no one single reasonable adjustment that applies to all disabled people, there's no one solution that fits all of our needs. So for us, equity is about thinking about the breadth and depth of all disabled people's experiences at the bar, be we people of color, carers from lower income backgrounds, LGBTQ+, you name it. And we want to ensure that we conduct our research and design our schemes with all disabled people in mind. And that will enable us to get a much richer picture of what it is to be disabled at the bar. So turning then to the next pillar, diversity. Now, diversity at the bar is quite a hot topic, and for the right reasons. Recent Bar Council research shows that just over 1 in 8 of us are reporting a disability at the bar. So it shows us that we are here already. However, to achieve equity and inclusion, which I will come on to in a minute, we must improve representation. And for that, we have to change our starting point. We have to recognize that disabled people can and will reach every level of the profession. So for us, representation is more than just thinking about disabled people in prominent positions as QCs and judges, but it's about showcasing the variety of paths that there are to the bar so that everyone can envision themselves at the bar. And that leads me to the third pillar, inclusion. We may be familiar with the Core Duty 8 of non-discrimination in the Bar Standards Board Code. And we might also have seen the article this week about how 1 in 6 barristers at the junior end of the bar are burning out and wanting to quit. So this shows us that effectively there's a business case for change. Something needs to change, but it's also a matter of principle. And this resurfaces what Constantina and James mentioned previously. Accessibility benefits all of us. When we improve working conditions, improve well-being, improve our understanding of each other and our clients, it improves the profession for all of us. So for us, inclusion is a mechanism to provide a practical foundation which allows equity and diversity to flourish. So in our vision of an inclusive practice, we are sharing best practice between us. We are highlighting the existing good work and collaborating together to think, what are the solutions that benefit not only the bar in its current picture, but the bar of the future? And we can do that by working with all of you, with chambers, universities, bar council, inns, the employed bar, practice area associations, the list goes on because the opportunities are endless. And this could look like things like recommendations for more inclusive recruitment practices. So for example, how some employers and chambers are already operating guaranteed interview schemes for disabled people, publicising their recruitment policies, sharing transparent scoring matrices for recruitment. It could look like things like internal policies being publicised, such as the Disability Confidence Scheme, understanding of what it's going to be like if you need to report an issue, but also how every single member of that chambers or of that workplace, of that university, know that disability inclusion is not just about reasonable adjustments. It's about that wider structural issue as well. And within this, that includes decision-making where disabled people are not only represented, but have the power and resources to create that effective change. But turning then to the final slide. In summary, equity, diversity, and inclusion together combine to be the foundation of our strategy at bringing disability to the bar. So we invite everyone here today to please get in touch at edi@bdabar.org to be able to work together to design a more accessible bar for all. Thank you. I will now hand over to Charles.
Thank you so much. That was a fantastic presentation. I'll do my best to follow it. Hello, I'm Charles and I'm Head of Research here at Bringing Disability to the Bar. Over the next few slides and the next few minutes, hopefully I'll try and be quick. I'm going to give you a real whistle-stop tour through research in our organisation and how we try to play a central role in our future and what we're going to be doing about it. So Oscar, next slide, please. Thank you. Right, so we have lots of aims, as I'm sure you're going to hear, already heard and hear throughout the presentation. But here at Research, these are kind of our holistic and central aims. So with being a research team inside the organisation, we really hope that to translate the data effectively to the other teams, such as schemes and EDI, so that nothing's lost in translation between primary collection and then making some actionable strategies. Obviously, to evaluate existing data, and fill in those knowledge gaps. Also to understand the perceptions of disability at the bar, key thing that's happening at the moment. And then last but not least is to fully support our team here at Research and to really help them pursue their goals and their own interests. Next, please, Oscar. So this is our team. We're 14 strong currently, but always ready for more. I'm not going to read out all the names, even though I could speak for hours on each person. We all come from a varying degree of backgrounds, but all of our roles externally involve research in some way. So there's lots of experience, there's lots of brilliant perceptions. And yeah, as I said, I could speak for hours. Next, please, Oscar. So this is how we operate. We have 3 major channels for research. So we like to champion independent projects. As I said, there's 14 of us, and we really want to bring our personalities to this, because obviously we all experience disability in some way. So each member is working on their own project at the moment, and they're designing that and planning that, and we co-author those in obviously supervisory panels, stuff like that. If you have any questions, please ask me at the end and I'll be happy to answer. We do group projects as well. So we either work in pairs or as a whole group. I'm actually going to talk you through one of our group projects in a minute. And then last but not least is collaboration. So we collaborate with organisations outside of our own, whether that be to lend out our skills and our knowledge or give participation rights to our members and stuff like that. And partner up and produce amazing industry reports, hopefully. As I say, we're just at the beginning, so lots of planning in the works. Next, please, Oscar. So I've just mentioned participation. These are the 4 main ways of participating. This is primary data collection. So number 1 is probably going to be questionnaires, whether that's an email link or a social media link. We'll be asking questionnaires just on things that we've either found or find interesting or want to guide strategies in the future. So those questionnaires will mostly be quantitative, which means, we were looking for asking a question, then, sliding scale 1 to 10, how much you agree. If you want a bit more personal, we've been doing focus groups or interviews where we're looking for really elaborative responses. And then somewhere in between is guidance notes. So we'll be asking you to kind of write us a response and try and be a little bit more elaborative on, a sliding scale. But obviously there'll be member participation, which we'll use internally. And then hopefully as things progress, we're going to start asking lots more in the whole industry. So we look forward to that. I think it's going to be very exciting. Next, please, Oscar. Thank you. So as I hinted at before, we're going to sneak a peek at one of our projects that we currently got ongoing. So I thought that the best place to start really was to start with a huge project, and that's really looking at the industry as a whole, doing a whole assessment of it. At the moment, we're just looking at secondary sources. So that's a lot of academic news and industry reports. Obviously, the Bar Council feature heavily in government employment data, university enrollment, and so on. We're really trying to get a good idea of what we're looking at really, and trying to influence some strategies moving forward. We've already highlighted that disability is a subject with the lowest response rate in the industry-wide questionnaires. So if we look at the Bar Council reports, which are excellent, we do find that with questions revolving around disability, there is typically quite a low response rate. We think that's due to perception, but there's a lot more research that's needed on that. But we find it very interesting, and we're going to be building some projects that really tackle that issue and hope to build on it. Secondly, is that we found that there has been a huge increase in hidden disability diagnosis the past few years. Obviously COVID's had a big effect, and we do expect that to grow, and that is at the bar as well. And then last one is just, I just mentioned it really just because it's quite interesting, is that there is a disability price tag being discovered and labelled. That comes from a report from Scope 2018 and onwards, where disabled people will on average spend £583 more than a non-disabled person throughout their living life. So that's on things like specialist and travel and all the other things that us disabled people have to spend and in order to live our lives. Me personally, things like parking permits and extra things like that, cost a lot of money. So we're going back to our aim about translating data. We're going to take that, and when we build schemes and mentorship programs, stuff like that, we're going to factor these price and things into that. Next, please, Oscar. So last but not least, this is the research projects we have coming up or planned. As I said, there's 14 of us, so I'm really sad that I can't fit all 14 projects on that one slide, but there's a hint at 3 of them. We do have the main projects at the bottom there, so the industry assessment, which I've just tried to break down for you quite quickly, and then we are planning an accessibility education support assessment at universities, because obviously we are aspiring barristers. So we're looking at assessing students and barriers to entry and stuff like that at the educational level. And then collaborative research projects as well. We do have one in the pipeline. I'd love to go into it lots more. I can answer questions at the end, and there's loads of information on our website. But we are, just a hint at it, we are looking at the barrister uniform, as you will, and how we can make reasonable adjustments to that, and how people with disabilities find the gown and the cap. So we're looking forward to having discussions about that, as well as that box at the bottom, which is we hope to aid internal strategy and decision making as much as possible. We really do see our job here at bringing disabilities to the bar to be quite central, and we're just trying to help as much people as possible. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you to my lovely friend Reese, who's going to talk you through the schemes. So thank you all for listening, and ask me questions at the end.
Thank you. I'm Reese Brown. I'm head of the schemes team, and I'll be talking a bit about what our plans are in the schemes team. Can we have the next slide, please? So whilst you've heard that research is central to achieving all of our goals at Be The Bar, schemes are what many of our members and our allies are going to sign up to take part in. They are the practical benefits to reap the hard work and efforts invested from all of our teams and allies. So we develop the schemes in collaboration with chambers and organisations and deliver them to members. You can have the next slide. So we discussed what we could bring to our members in the context of our mission statement. And it was clear that limiting the name to both chambers and mini pupilages was far too narrow. We needed the freedom to use our creative juices, as it were. So we needed something that was more open to exploration, and we settled for the term schemes. Could I have the next slide, please? So obviously, a good starting point for establishing a scheme are the already existing schemes, and probably the most established of the already existing schemes are mini pupillage schemes. I won't need to define to this audience what a mini pupillage actually is, beyond giving you the 2 questions which is ultimately put to a mini pupil. That is, am I for the bar, and is the bar for me? And it's worth remembering those questions as you consider the rest of this slide. It would not be in the interest of our objectives to allow mini pupilages to adopt structures which were originally designed many, many years ago without our objectives in mind. And this adopts a further relevance during COVID, where lots of mini pupilages are going online. And of course, we know that the experience of mini pupilages at different sets will contrast. And of course, we encourage that contrast because it will feed back into the part of the research. But we must focus on ensuring that in the short time of a mini pupillage, as much can be learned by both parties as possible. And we must always return to the second question that I raised at the beginning of this slide. Is the bar for me? And if the answer to the question is no, we need to find out why it's no, so that we can remedy the problem. Can I have the next slide, please? The second scheme is the two-way mentorship scheme. So traditionally with mentorship schemes, a mentor would aim to offer their mentee advice and assistance on matters relating to their career aspirations, perhaps direct them to programs and opportunities relevant, assistance perhaps with CVs and applications, advice more generally on how to succeed in the bar or on how to network. But on a two-way mentorship, there's the concept that a mentee adopts a quasi-mentoring role in reverse, and where they feel comfortable doing so, they would share their personal experience of living with a disability and share any troubles that they have experienced in pursuing a career into the bar, or elsewhere, of course. And especially with BEDA Bar, they would also provide mentors with BEDA Bar's support, including findings that have been made by BEDA Bar's research team, information guides, and even offers of seminars and lectures on how chambers and the Inns of Court may be able to provide reasonable adjustments for people with disabilities. And also, where necessary and where appropriate, they would promote the use of specific charities who are able to provide accessibility training, because having the humility and often feeling as if you have the right to acknowledge the limit to one's own knowledge is important in the context of accessibility. And there are so many charities which specialize in so many different disabilities who offer specific training on accessibility to which you can have direct access if appropriate. Can I have the next slide, please? And to use the words of the great Bilbo Baggins, whither then I cannot say yet, because we necessarily are outside the bar looking inside. We don't know what the bar needs. We want to know, what does the bar think the bar needs? So only really with your contribution can we really hope to bring disability to the bar. And I invite you to contact my team at schemes@bedabar.org, and we can begin the process as soon as you're ready. And I'm going to hand you over to our next speaker.
Hello, back to me. So I'm going to take you through some of the aims of the education team and some more information on that. As with the rest of this presentation, I'll just say that it will be found on our website. It is linked below. It's a lot of information to take in right now, so you will be able to come back to it at another point. Can I have the next slide, please? So as you can see here, everything that we will do from research schemes will all link back to the education that we provide, whether that be to chambers, to individuals, or to colleges, to be able to change the rhetoric on disability and how disability is seen at the bar. We will need to be able to research and to back that up. So in order to do that, and in order to achieve that, we have these principal aims, as you can see there, to raise awareness on the complexity of disabilities, to lobby the bar to be more understanding, and to ensure a career as a barrister is accessible and supportive enough for the individual. And thirdly, to raise awareness that disabled individuals are sort of disproportionately underrepresented group within the bar. And the next slide, please. Fourthly, we will create basic disability training materials for universities, the Inns of Court and chambers and the judiciary. Of course, we can't do this without you and without your input and how you see that we can support people in the process, whether it be that you've experienced a problem that you see as needing changing in future, or you feel that you can contribute to this matter, then again, get in touch and we'll be able to liaise with you on that point. Yes, and last point is to inform the bar that having a disability brings with it a set of useful skills. It's a whole set of structures that we deal with every day, and a whole set of problems with our own solutions that we deal with aside from training to be barristers. And some of the coping mechanisms and some of the issues we face will obviously face others, and we can feed that back into the bar and feed that back into best practices in order to assist chambers in their recruitment processes. So get the next slide, please. That's all from me and all from us. Thank you so much for listening. There are more contact details there below of emails where you can get in touch with us. Of course, our Instagram, our Twitter, our Facebook inboxes are open, and our inboxes are all open. We are free to chat. I will now hand over to Constantina, who will introduce us to the main part of our talk, which will be our speaker presentations. Thank you.
Oh, first of all, thank you so much for listening to this presentation. And Oscar, if you can stop doing the screen, that would be great. I want to remind you, if anyone needs a coffee break, you can have a break, and then the event will be recorded, so you won't miss anything. So I want to make that clear. So I'm extremely excited to introduce our first guest speaker. His honor, Judge Fayez Afzal, CBE. Judge Afzal, the circuit judge, and the only family civil circuit judge which registered blind in the country. He's a diversity and community relations judge, and part of the drive to increase judicial diversity so the judiciary can reflect the society it serves with all the advantages that brings. His Honor Judge Fayez Afzal also received OB in 2008 and the CBE in 2021. His Honor Judge Fayez Afzal, CBE, will be discussing in this event his experience with the bar as a disabled individual who started as a barrister and then joined the judiciary. He will be discussing in what ways he hopes the bar to be more inclusive and accessible, and what his experience in terms of judiciary is when it comes to accessibility, and also some tips for success for disabled aspiring barristers. Thank you so much. And now we'll hand the event to His Honor Judge Fayez Afzal, CBE. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I am incredibly privileged, I say, to be present to join this event because it represents the launch of something which I think is going to be absolutely essential rather than desirable to the way in which the diversity and inclusivity of the legal profession can be improved. From the presentations, I'm sure we've all gathered that a tremendous amount of thought and planning has gone into how the aims of this new charity can be progressed. And it is essential, in my view, that we recognize this, that 20% of society have a disability, and that's taken from the ages of 16 to 64. So generally, as was classified working age. And I'm sure that we can all understand readily that 20% of the legal profession, and focusing here on the bar, does not consist of 20% of people who are disabled. and therefore disability is a seriously underrepresented group within the profession. And why is that important? Well, it means that the profession doesn't reflect the society it serves. It means, as a consequence, that those requiring the bar's services will not encounter necessarily the kind of people that they are and the people that they are around. And it means, as a consequence, that the opportunity to learn from each other and different types of disability that exist are denied. So it is essential, in my view, that society does, the bar does reflect the society it serves, because that brings about confidence, knowledge, and credibility. So all that is so important, and it builds on the need then to have a legal profession which is diverse, from which judges can then ultimately be appointed, because, as we all know, judges are appointed from those from a legal background. And we cannot have a diverse judiciary if in turn there isn't a diverse profession from which those judges can be appointed. So the two aspects go very much hand in hand. And one of my key messages is always never underestimate the abilities of those with a disability. On one occasion, one of my friends many years ago, when I was a practicing barrister, turned around to me and said, if with your disability, for somebody who didn't know you, had to be told that you're a practicing barrister, you sit as a fee-paid judge, you sit with the medical regulators, you're a doctor of a university, and you've met the Queen, they wouldn't believe you. And I thought, well, why wouldn't they? These are all things that are true. And I paused for a moment and thought, well, actually, do you know what? That might be the case. And doesn't that show that the expectations of people in society and sometimes within the professions is that somebody with a disability cannot do these things? So the best way to dispel those myths is to highlight those who are able to enter the profession, who are able to remain in the profession and who progress, because that gives confidence to them that it can be done, and they should trust the abilities and have confidence in the abilities of somebody with a disability. And it gives reassurance to those with a disability that somebody has actually been able to do this, so that they have that inspiration and renewed confidence to pursue their own abilities to the full. I always say this repeatedly, that anyone who is talented and determined enough can have a successful career at the bar, but with a disability, that determination and that talent has to be extra, and it always is. A person with a disability, to achieve the same outcome as somebody else, has to invest a lot more. We are supreme problem solvers. A very basic thing for others is sometimes a very significant obstacle for us, but we find solutions all of the time. If somebody wanted to give me a phone number and I haven't got access to somewhere where I can record that, then that's a problem for me. How do I solve that? I've honed in my memory such that I can retain a mobile number for enough time to get to a computer and write it down. So that's just one small example of the many things we have to do to overcome the obstacles that our disabilities present. And so we are supreme problem solvers. And isn't that such a key credential for somebody practicing at the bar? Solving problems. What do people, after all, go to lawyers and barristers for? A legal problem which they need solving. So these things cannot be underestimated. The abilities and the talents of those with a disability should never be underestimated. So therefore, when it comes to entry then to the profession, we need to bust some myths about what people can do, We need to make sure that teachers at schools, colleges, admissions tutors, universities understand that a career at the bar is entirely possible. My own reflections on this are that I remember going to an admissions interview at a sixth form college and being asked about why I wanted to go into law. And of course, at that stage, beyond watching the television, Kavanagh QC and LA Law in those days, I didn't have any family members in the law. And I was asked that specific question: absent a family member in the law, how do you believe you're going to enter the profession? And with a disability such as a visual impairment, how are you going to travel around? Perhaps it would be better to consider a different career. The college didn't, the sixth form college didn't run A-level law, so I decided against it. I didn't take their advice, and I went to a different college where I did study A-level law, found that I was better at that than business studies and sociology, went on to do the degree. But that could have been the interest and curiosity in a legal career brought to a swift end because of misunderstandings. You do not need, as we know, a member in the legal profession ahead of you, because through fair and open recruitment practices and appropriate training on unconscious bias, training and in place for those who sit on those panels means recruitment is now fairly and objectively dealt with, and having a member in the legal profession, while useful for advice and mentoring, isn't the be-all and end-all, because through what has been described today, mentoring, advice and assistance is available from other sources. So we need to dispel those myths. We need to ensure that with schools and college and university engagement, that happens. As a diversity and community relations judge, and because of the Lord Chief Justice's personal interest in school engagement, judges visit regularly schools to provide information about how to enter the professions and how ultimately a diverse judiciary can be achieved. So all of these things need to be carefully considered. All too often there are stories of universities discouraging people from the bar and suggesting an alternative legal career, and that's because there isn't enough information available to them. So going into universities and encouraging law students, once they've decided to study law, to enter the barrister profession is essential. And I know that the Bar Council does the same with its schools engagement programme, and I know INS do the same. So I hope that with an organisation such as this, everyone will work together to fulfil that and progress that further. Entry into the profession, pupillage are very hard to secure, and assistance in interviews, CVs, the online applications, and how to become an irresistible candidate for pupillage are also very important, and that mentoring and guidance and support has to be there, and confidence in those who are recruiting that those with a disability will bring a lot more than first may be apparent. So that's also essential. And then within the profession, there are all too often stories of people who enter the profession who are not retained because sometimes they are unsupported, their talents are not understood, and reasonable adjustments are not in place at the right time, and the right reasonable adjustments being in place. So all of those things need to be thought about, and training, a source of support and guidance to chambers and other pupillage providers, and the places where people turn to for advice need to be fully supported in that respect. And of course, progression within the profession, QC appointments, judicial applications are all ways in which I say that those with a disability ought to be supported. Overall, fulfilling that ambition as described of a diverse bar and ultimately a diverse pool of legal talent from which judges can be appointed, which is a fundamental aim, because as I said, for the bar, having a diverse profession commands the trust and confidence of society. The absolute same principles apply when it comes to the judiciary. So I wish this organisation every success in all of its aims and all of its constituent parts, which all work very much together to put forward, I say, a very comprehensive, multi-pronged approach to this very complex and wide-ranging point that needs to be addressed, which is assistance of those with a disability and not allowing disability to be a barrier, which sadly it has been for so many for so long. Whilst I recognise a lot has been done, a lot needs to be done, and that has to be recognised, and I believe it is. So I'm again very pleased and proud to be part of this launch event, and I hope that the organisation goes from strength to strength. And I thank you all for taking time to be here.
Thank you so much, Judge Afzal. It's been really great hearing your speech, and I think a lot of the committee members as well as the attendees found it very, very helpful. So thank you very much for sharing your experience. I would like now to move to Christina Warner, who's our second guest speaker, and as you already see from the presentation, she's an upcoming trustee and a huge part of the organization in advising and support. So Christina Warner is a barrister at the Goldsmith Chambers, the family and animal protection barrister, and she's credited by the likes of Amnesty UK, the UK Diversity Legal Awards, and featured in Middle Temple's The Medical History Month Exhibition 2022. Christina campaigns to raise awareness on the needs of LGBT and Spanish-speaking communities and those with disabilities accessing the family courts. Today, Christina will be discussing her experience of the bar as someone who joined the bar with no disability but developed one later in her career. Christina will also be discussing ways that she hopes the bar to be more accessible and inclusive, and she will give some tips for the aspiring barristers and why people should join organizations like the Disability Bar. Thank you so much. So, Christina, if you're ready.
Thank you so much. Just before I start, I'd like to say how grateful I am to have heard from Judge Afzal. As someone who is visually impaired, I'm truly inspired by what he said this evening. So I was very conflicted about how to approach my talk, my part of today's launch. Speaking about something so personal to me, I thought I could reach to statistics, I could refer to case studies, and then I thought to myself, maybe being honest is the best way forward. So to tell my story is to be honest. I have Stargardt's, which is juvenile macular degeneration. And the way I describe it to people is it's how older people lose their eyesight, but happening to younger people. So it can manifest itself in childhood, adolescence, or like myself as an adult. I was always aware of disability and its impact as my younger brother was diagnosed with Stargardt's and has had quite a steep decline in his sight some years ago. So although I was born able-bodied as my brother was, we quickly became aware of how disability can impact on the way we navigate through life. So as I noticed that my sight was deteriorating as someone who was able-bodied and fully independent, I went through stages similar to bereavement, I would say, anger, grief, fear, sadness, and a profound sense of isolation. What would my future be like? What would my interaction with my surroundings be like? What did the future hold for me? But as Stargardt's progressed and as my sight declined, I knew that it had gone beyond my capability to live in denial. So I eventually got a diagnosis at the beginning of last year. And I had to start speaking out about what was taking place because there were only so many times I could make jokes about bumping into things and not recognizing people. Although it made for great comedic value, I just wasn't able to keep up that facade. So as I started to tell my story and started to be open about the challenges that I faced, I was met with some stupid comments, and I apologize, I should have caveat this by giving a trigger warning. I was met with silly, stupid, ridiculous comments by people saying that if they were losing their sight, they wouldn't be able to live, that they would commit suicide, that they wouldn't cope. I don't have a reply for those people, but I knew that I had to step up. And as a barrister who had a busy practice, I knew that I would have to be honest with my clerks and with the head of chambers, and I've been so lucky to be so supported. I think that those of us with disabilities, we somehow trigger an existential crisis amongst able-bodied people. I think we challenge the status quo, we challenge how we navigate through life and what other people would do if the cards had been dealt to them. And I have had to be very open, as I have a support worker, I have an assistant that comes with me to court, and as the courts are swaying back towards having in-person hearings. And I have been very honest with other barristers, with solicitors, and I've been really impressed at how being so open about my situation, it's prompted dialogue with other people. They've shared very personal stories about themselves. It may be that they've told me stories about struggling to cope with a parent with dementia, struggling to cope with a child who has autism, or maybe themselves they're struggling and coping with chronic fatigue or chronic pain. Those conversations are so vitally important because it forms a sense of commonality amongst us, that disability isn't just one of us, it's all of us. And that sense of isolation, it breaks down those barriers. So I reached out to organisations within the legal profession, associations, and I found how sadly underrepresented we are and the lack of support that there is for us, especially barristers with disabilities. And I found great support and kindness in speaking to other barristers with disabilities, their wise words and their cheering on of other barristers with disabilities, meeting these extraordinary superhuman beings and how they're able to run busy practices. They are doing extra work, pro bono work, volunteering. And I've been in awe of all of them and the kindness that they've shown me, and how they've told me all too often that the door is always open, their phone is always on, that if I'm having a down day, they are always there. And that kindness is invaluable. But the official support for barristers with disabilities just, I would say, isn't there. I don't think I'll ever be okay with losing my sight. Obviously, Stargardt's, by virtue of it being juvenile macular degeneration, it's progressive. So the challenges that I face today, there'll be more challenges in future. I don't think I'll ever be okay with the fact that this condition is stealing time from me, is stealing memories from me. But I am okay with welcoming, mentoring and helping the next generation of barristers with disabilities, and how exciting it is to be part of this organisation, because I know that the students that come forward, that make it to the bar through their tenacity and the skills and life experience they will bring, they will accomplish phenomenal things. And I'm so proud to form even a small part of that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. And on behalf of the whole committee of Bring Disability to the Bar, we are extremely lucky to have you as a primary trustee, but also as a mentor of the organization. Thank you so much. It's a huge privilege. I would like now to pass on the event to Daniel Holt. Daniel is the founding chair of the Association of Disabled Lawyers, has engaged with the Bar Standards Board, Legal Services Board, Solicitor Regulation Authority, and many other organizations in order to help and improve the experiences of lawyers and students with health conditions. He's also serving and as the Mid-Temple Young Bars Association's Diversity Inclusion Officer. He has also served on the Executive Committee of the Human Rights Lawyers Association and the Advisory Committee of Picture Academy. For this event, Daniel will discuss his experience of the bar, his experience of seeking and obtaining pupillage, and what ways he hopes the bar to be more inclusive and accessible, and why we need more organizations that try to improve disability and inclusivity at the bar these days. And if you're ready, Daniel, you can now share the screen for your presentation. Please let me know if there's trouble.
Okay, bear with me one more. Sorry, can you see my PowerPoint now?
Yes, Daniel, yeah.
Okay, thank you for introducing me. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm really excited about Media Bar. I think it's got an important role to play in going forward in improving disability equality at a bar. I've been involved in increasing the equality of disabled people in all legal professions for about 5 or 6 years. When after I set up the Association of Disabled Lawyers, back then there wasn't really many other groups around, and it was really one of the first, and it came out of a piece of research done by Legally Disabled. Since then, we've had quite a few groups pop up, and it's really nice to see these organizations put around and on it. It's also really helpful because the association can't really focus on one profession because we touch all of them. And I think that's important because we have more in common and we don't. The same issues often pop up across the board, but it's better to have other groups who can focus in on perfecting specific problems. The ADL aims to be a supporting group, so we support lawyers and students from all professions. We campaign for more inclusive legal professionals. We're keen on research, education and training, and we cooperate with other groups. And finally, and most importantly, I think we're keen to promote the rights of disabled people in general, because we are part of the wider disabled community, and we can use our skills for the betterment of that. Tonight, I want to talk about why Media Bar and other groups are needed at a bar, because with all these new groups popping up, one accusation maybe, why do you need all these new groups? Well, I'm about to tell you what. They are really important, and you'll see right now. All research I'm about to tell you came from the Legally Disabled report. The citation is available in the PowerPoint. One of the key issues at a bar is the ill treatment of disabled people. 45% of disabled persons experience ill treatment in the workplace. Not 45% in general, 71% believe it to be because it was because of disability. 54 percent didn't report it. 37.5% sometimes reported it, and 8.3% always reported. So it's not really being spoken about as much as it should be, because obviously people should feel comfortable to report it every time. And yeah, 35% of it is coming from the same people. And the most coming from our poor attitudes, a lack of understanding, ridicule, and demeaning language, not making reasonable adjustments, bullying, and overbearing supervision, and unreasonable targets on performance. Now, this report only came out a few years ago, so I do believe it remains quite common. And that's why this is one reason why the bar and the association and OBA play an important role in raising the awareness of these issues, because it is totally unacceptable. People reporting issues with hearings as well must felt the qualifying sections were average in their accessibility at best, and most figure poor. So we really need to work with the English to talk about how we be more inclusive as a body. And yeah, English are our professional or shall we say. And it's important that we are inclusive when we operate. I know from experience that English can be quite old-fashioned and looking to make change, particularly around reasonable adjustments. We speak about having a discretion to make reasonable adjustments when in fact you have an obligation to make reasonable adjustments. We only debate about what adjustments you make or whether or not you're reasonable, not whether or not you can make reasonable adjustments. Again, privilege require and average negative experience in terms of accessibility. The problem is twofold in your professional and where you work. I think most people say they weren't confident to disclose a disability, and that didn't really change as you get to know your supervisor and your colleagues. And I think that's quite worrying in itself, because you will imagine once you get in and once you feel you know people, you might feel a bit more, that you can be a bit more open, but the research indicates that's a lot of things, and the best you can get with. The making of reasonable adjustments is always a second point because of the attitude towards it and the misunderstanding about how much it will cost. I think 90% of reasonable adjustments are quite easy to implement. It's only at the top end where things get a bit complex. But again, in an open conversation, it's often options and opportunities to make things work. 72.3% of people at the bar in question reasonable adjustment said it was stressful and a cause of anxiety, which I can understand why. It's not an easy conversation to have. It can make you feel somewhat vulnerable because it gets personal at times. But of course, the onus is on the workplace to make you feel comfortable to do so. And only small number and most were home or flexible working, which is quite interesting because before the pandemic, when the report came out, that was considered to be something that could not be implemented easily, and now we're all working from so that's one way in which the pandemic has been beneficial, if you will, for disabled people. There are many ways in which it's been terrible. The level of support I got is variable. Often there are reports that staff and the judiciary aren't quite up to it. 21% of the participants in the research use access to it, and felt DNA leadership was lacking, and 42% felt personally considering into a given job. And again, it's programming, isn't it? Going on to progression, and your ambitious, as I'm sure many barristers are, you probably have ambitions to become a QC or a judge at some point. Most people felt they didn't have the same chance as long as disabled people. And that's quite obvious, isn't it? Because you get in any profession, the less diverse it becomes. We know that with women, we know that with people of color, and it's the same in disabled people too. And my PowerPoint has been quite downbeat, and we are celebrating the launch of Media Bar. But I think that shows why Media Bar and All Bar and other groups are important to the profession, because we need groups like this and maybe more on pop up in the future where we can focus on these issues. I hope Media Bar in the research will be able to look into how we tackle these problems in ways that haven't already been explored. Legally Disabled reports set out problems and recommendations. Unfortunately, I haven't got time to explain how I think we can deal with these issues, but I hope going forward we can all work together to make a difference in this profession. And finally, I wish we gave all of us in their pursuits and their aims, and we look forward to working with them in the future.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for this great presentation. And thank you so much for including so many statistics. And Idama is very excited to collaborate with ADL in the near future. Thank you so much once again. I would like now to pass on the event to Daniel Taylor. Daniel has recently been called to the bar by the Honorable Society of Inner Temple. He has a Master of Chemistry, Mineralogical and Medical Chemistry, an MSc in Bioinformatics, a Bachelor in Psychology, Physiology Liao. He has also PhD in Biophysics and currently studying at a BA in PPE. Daniel has been paralyzed for the last 20 years and he's a quadriplegic. In this event, Daniel will be discussing his experience at the bar as a quadriplegic individual and how he hopes the bar to be more supportive and accessible and inclusive. And also his experience of trying to save pupillage right now. And so, Daniel, if you're ready, we would be very excited to hear from you.
Thank you very much. Could I just ask, would it be possible to go full screen on the video? Or is that not possible?
I see you as full screen. So
okay, I'm in full screen at the moment. Yes. Apologies.
So you're in my full screen.
That's fine. That's absolutely great. Well, firstly, I just wanted to thank the organisation for giving me this platform. I'm afraid I can't quite compete with the previous speakers in terms of credibility and stature. My talk is probably going to be rather more conversational and probably from a slightly outsider perspective, but I hope you'll be able to take something away from what I'm saying in its conversational style. And obviously I will be around afterwards to answer any questions anyone has. As my introduction alluded to, I've been a wheelchair user for the past 20 years. My disability came about as a result of a car accident. So I've got, I suppose, perspective on both being disabled and being able-bodied for at least some of my life. And I think having that perspective is quite interesting sometimes, because sometimes it's really easy to forget about what kind of barriers disabled people come across if you don't have a disability. And what I think is important to remember is this isn't often through malice. This isn't often through people deliberately going out of their way to cause problems for disabled people. It's just ill education and misunderstanding from their perspective. And I think it's really important what this organisation is doing in terms of education. It's the first time I've seen it being done on the industrial scale that they're talking about, because sometimes people don't mean to misunderstand. They just need to be pointed in the right direction, and they just need to widen their gaze and perspective on things. And I think it's really great that what this organisation is trying to do is not necessarily dictate to people and to say, this is what we demand. It's more a case of presenting the facts to people and actually saying, look, these are the facts here. And I think Dan before me did a brilliant job of explaining, you know, if you present people with facts, if you present people with information, and you simply give them the information that perhaps they don't have access to, it's really easy to build a case from that. And I think some of the statistics Dan gave were absolutely brilliant, because they really highlight the issues that are faced on a day-to-day basis. So I also think it's worth mentioning that, you know, this is not just simply confined to the bar itself. There are lots of other walks of life, other disciplines, other occupations that also suffer enormously because disability isn't often thought of in the same way. For an example, I think medicine is a similar profession that is starting to come round this idea that disability has not been on the radar. And I think this is more a cultural shift than anything else. I think what you've seen in recent years, and this goes back decades, is certain minority groups have had their issues brought more into the daylight, and the rest of society have kind of caught up. So I would have said issues such as LGBT, race issues, things like that have, you know, very much in the last couple of decades, they have been accepted into mainstream thought. But I think the problem is disability hasn't. And it's really only now that people are starting to appreciate that disability is an issue. Now, why is that a problem? Well, I would argue that unlike some other issues in society, disability is complex, it's very wide-ranging, and there is no one-size-fits-all. So when you talk about disability, how are you supposed to come up with single solutions when people with disabilities have got so many complex needs? And at the end of the day, disabled people, I don't think, and this is perhaps a misconception that a lot of people think, disabled people, and I certainly probably speak from my own personal perspective rather than anyone else's, we don't want preferential treatment, we just want equal treatment. And it's a case of making the system a level playing field for everyone, not giving disabled people a leg up so they're in a heightened position to anyone else. What I also think is important to acknowledge is that the bar is a small c conservative institution. It's an institution that has been around for many, many hundreds of years, and it doesn't change very quickly. It can take decades sometimes to get ideas off the ground and, you know, get people to understand what's going on. So if you look at it from a long-term perspective, you need time, you need effort, and with disability, you unfortunately need funding and you need money in order to implement the kind of changes that you need to counteract disability. All one needs to do is go to Temple or some of the older parts of where the legal profession is housed in London and look at some of the buildings there. You know, to install a lift, to install the kind of changes needed to get people even simply through the front door of chambers is not a quick fix, and it's not a cheap fix. To install something like a lift is colossally expensive, and I think that's part of the problem. Let's be honest, if these problems were cheap and easy, they would have been done long ago. And the reason that they're not is the reason why we're in this situation now. I just wanted to talk very briefly about a mini pupillage experience I had. So I've probably been, I don't read this, I've probably been kicking around, you know, looking at the bar, considering it as a career for probably the same sort of time Dan Holt has. And we've spoken at length about this. And I think when I did my mini pupillage experience, this was about 5 years ago, I got a mini pupillage in London. So I phoned up the chambers and I said, you know, I'm going to this mini pupillage, I'm in a wheelchair. And I said, you know, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And the clerk said, oh, well, we don't know yet. We should know at the end of the week. And I said, well, I need to book accommodation. It's not so easy for me just to rock up in London and just go wherever you tell me to go. I need to, bring all my equipment with me. I need to bring a carer with me. Staying in London for a week is not cheap. These are the kind of things that as a disabled person, you have to plan ahead, and you can't improvise as readily as others. But the person at the Chambers didn't really appreciate this. They didn't particularly understand this. When I then phoned up and asked where I was going, and they said, you're going to be in this court at this time, I then said, well, is that court accessible? They didn't know. Nobody knew. So I had to turn up on the day hoping and praying that I could actually get into the court and actually attend the trial I was due to watch that day. Fortunately, I was able to do it, but I found out subsequently that that was sheer luck and fluke that I was able to do that. And there are so many other court buildings around the country that wheelchair users just simply cannot get into. So what happens in that situation where you get something like a mini pupillage and you're not able to actually undertake it because you can't even get through the front doors or even engage in something you've had planned for weeks? So these are just issues that I think will be broached in time. And I think it's going to take time. It's going to take effort. We need to be patient. But I have faith that we are riding the wave of something that I think is happening throughout society at the moment, where I think people are taking disability more seriously and then wanting to be more proactive about it, which can only be a good thing. And I just wanted to demonstrate this point that prior to the pandemic, I put a tweet out saying about the possibility of doing virtual mini pupillages because of the access issue I've already mentioned, the cost of actually having to uproot and move your life somewhere for a week to undertake a mini pupillage, all these kind of issues. I put a tweet out, and the response I got, some of it was quite positive, some of it was very indifferent. Some people said you can't really do it virtually, it doesn't really work, you've got to be there, you've got to get the touch and feel of doing a mini pupillage. And this was prior to the pandemic. And of course, what the pandemic's done is it's opened so many doors for the disabled community, because over the course of the pandemic and since, I think Chambers have really cottoned on to this fact that actually doing virtual mini pupillages have so many benefits to them, because you don't have to fork out thousands of pounds to stay in London anymore. You don't have to worry about transport. You don't have to worry about getting on an accessible bus or taking the underground. You'll really, it offers up so much freedom. So I think things like the pandemic have, in a strange way, leveled the playing field and actually made life, like with remote hearings as well, so much easier for disabled people, that again, people are beginning to cotton on to this. And they're beginning to appreciate that actually, we're neglecting a whole raft of people who can do this job, but we just need to make it easier for them. I will just conclude by saying that a conversation I had with James a few weeks ago was about, we need to get a handle, I think, of accessible buildings. So lots of barristers go to all these different courts up and down the UK. Who at the moment has any idea what courts, and I'm talking Crown Court, Magistrates Court, County Courts, how many of them have disabled toilets? How many of them have disabled parking? How many of them have got steps up? These are really fundamental questions. I don't think anyone's got any idea at this point of what the answer is to them. And I think this kind of organisation could get answers where you could find out this information. You could just create an enormous PDF document, stick it online, and then everyone's got the same information. People can look at this document. The clerks could look at the document as well. So if they take on a disabled pupil as a mini pupil, they know which courts to send them to. All this information is so easy to get hold of and easy to put together. it's incredible that no one's actually done it before. So I would like to just conclude with a quote, if I might, because I think it really is in the spirit of what we're doing and what this organization is hopefully going to go on to achieve. And it's actually from an American legal academic called Robert Hensel. And he simply says, "There is no greater disability in society than the inability to see a person as more." So thank you very much for hearing me, and I look forward to your questions. And thank you very much once again for having me as a speaker.
It was a pleasure from having you as a speaker, Daniel, as well as everyone, all of the guest speakers so far. And thank you so much also to everyone who is spending their evening with us today. We've received so many questions privately and through the forum, so I will try, me and James, to ask as many as possible, but with conscious of the time as well. So the questions will be addressed to all the guest speakers as well as the committee members. And please raise your hand if you want to answer, and we will try to be as efficient as possible. I'll start with the first question, which is addressed to all the bar members. Has the lack of representation of disabled people at the bar ever made them hesitant on a journey in the bar, like make you hesitant in your journey at the bar? Who would like to answer the question? And I see Daniel. Daniel, would you like to go on, please? You're on mute.
Yes, it is. No. No, it didn't put me off. It might have put myself off. The reason why it didn't put me off is because underrepresentation is common in quite a few professions, and I think if you are going to go down a career like this one, you do need a sense of self-confidence. That doesn't mean if you're not confident now, that you won't be, you will develop confidence. But you can look at what you've achieved before and decide for yourself whether you can do it or not without needing to see other people do it before you. Now there are more people coming out who's disabled in this profession. But even so, if there isn't anyone like you already, you can be the first.
Thank you so much. And would anyone else want to add anything else, perhaps? If no, we can go to the next question. Yes, Christina.
I agree with a lot of what Daniel said. I think reaching out to other barristers that you can relate to, that understand what it is to live with the challenges of being disabled. Obviously, we are all as individual as the challenges we're living with. So just as a brief comparison, I have the same condition as my brother and we're siblings, but our stories are very different. But I certainly can draw strength from everyone that I've heard from today, although the challenges that we encounter are very different. So certainly don't feel that you don't have a place at the bar. As Daniel said, if there isn't someone like you, be the first. Absolutely.
Hello, Daniel Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, I was simply just going to basically agree with the previous two speakers. I mean, you know, let's be honest here, the bar is not an easy profession. You have to be pretty thick-skinned. You've got to really want it. And I think and I think the first speaker, Judge Afzal, apologies if I've mispronounced your name, but I think what you said was very, very apt in terms of, you know, if you have a disability already, it's almost like having another part-time job on top of your full-time job, because anything and everything that most people would take for granted for a disabled person takes so much more effort. The fact you've got this far in the first place, I think, speaks volumes about your character and the kind of person you are, which I think, to be honest with you, probably makes you a good fit as a barrister in the first place.
And sorry, if I can add to that, obviously, when you're managing an impairment or in disabling environment, you are always developing skills other people on having to develop on a day-to-day basis. Even speakers spoke about being great problem solvers. We really are great problem solvers, and the best. In fact, we're dealing with problems all the time. Another aspect is managing your commitments, your diary. If you have personal assistants, you're already a team manager. You know accounting, you know how to motivate people, get information out of people, and you can use all that experience in developing your career.
Thank you so much, everyone, for this question. Before James asks the next question, there was someone asking in the chat and how you can get involved in the committee. We are recruiting for a few places, including equity and inclusion. So more information about that will be published on our website, and which you'll find a link on the chat and also via LinkedIn. So now, James, to you for the second question.
Okay, so there's another question here. So has the lack of representation of disabled people at the bar ever made you hesitant on your journey to the bar? And I want to extend that question as well into the judiciary, and I hope that we can have some comments from Judge Afzal on that. But in the first place, how has the lack of representation of disabled people at the bar ever made you hesitant whilst on your journey to the bar?
Well, I can assist with that. When I entered the barrister profession, it didn't. As I say, the credentials for a good barrister, in my view, are determination and a proven academic record and the talents that are required at the bar. So it didn't make me hesitant. I was aware of two practicing members of the bar that were registered blind. I reached out to both of them and spoke to them by telephone and had some arm's length mentoring from them. It was helpful, but that was after I'd been called to the bar already, because my inn, fortunately, had called both of them to the bar. So I was put in touch with them at that stage. So it didn't put me off wanting to be a barrister in the first instance. I did the bar course regardless. And when I was called to the bar, I was put in touch with both of those, and I had some assistance from them with guidance and mentoring. So no, the lack of representation at the bar didn't put me off. It did make me worry slightly that would Chambers actually be able to place confidence in me, because I secured pupillage in the Midlands, and at that time, and sadly still the case now, I'm not aware of any other blind practicing barrister in the Midlands. The two that I referred to are both practicing on the Northern Circuit. So that did make me slightly worried, and that's what I mentioned earlier about increasing confidence in Chambers and others that people with disabilities are able to be practicing members. So that did worry me, but it didn't put me off, no. And extending that to the judiciary, I'm aware, when I was first appointed as a judge, I'm aware of one blind circuit judge who sits in London. I spoke to him, but again, it didn't put me off because sadly, as often is the case, when you're the first in an area, it can be quite a lonely position, but reassurance from friends and colleagues that I was actually doing a job equally as good as everyone else was perhaps all that I needed. And that's what kept me going. So I made the application regardless of the underrepresentation of disability in the judiciary. But that's what motivates me to try and improve it so that it's actually a better and more encouraging place, but never be put off by underrepresentation. Sadly, disability is underrepresented everywhere, and all we can do is try and improve it by not being put off and entering into the profession and progressing within it and entering into the judiciary.
Thank you, Judge Assel.
I would like now to ask the third question, which is I think quite relevant to a lot of aspirants and advisors, as this is the scholarship and privilege season. And how can disabled people stand out from the crowd at interviews in a way that all the attention is not put on their disability? And I would like this question to be answered, if possible, both by the guest speakers, but also the committee, because I think there'll be a variety of experience. So who would like to go first? You can raise your hands. Yes, Reese.
Well, I know that this can be answered in two ways, and it's a matter of preference. And I know that there's conflicting opinions on this. I know that some people are of the opinion that it's good to raise your disability at an early stage, but some people are, for personal reasons, reluctant to do that. And if you want to stand out for reasons that are not related to your disabilities, it's perfectly reasonable to base your entire application on who you are and what you're about. You heard from Judge Afzal earlier just how much you can get from being disabled. Being disabled, the obstacles that are put in front of you are in some ways your most unique selling point. They create so many problems that you have to overcome, and you see on many chambers websites the sort of attributes that they want to see in you when you're applying for pupillage. They want to see problem solvers. They want to see people who are capable of doing this. And I don't think that being disabled is something you should be ashamed of. It's something that you should embrace. But if you do feel like at any stage of the application process you would want to withhold your disability for personal reasons, you can. It's a completely legitimate way of going about it, and standing out from the crowd would be done in the normal way. You'd identify the parts of your career progression that have been unique, and you'd present them in the normal way. But I personally would encourage you in the same way as Judge Afzal has, to use your disability to show how you've had to overcome problems in ways that other people just haven't had to in their life, and how you're a problem solver.
Thank you, Reese. And yes, Daniel, hold. You're on mute, Daniel.
Yeah, I think you can remember to take much view of one thing I want to add is obviously it's a personal preference whether you want to get close or not. But if you need reasonable adjustments, it's best to let people know, because obviously your duty to provide reasonable adjustment comes in when the employer or chambers or whatever you or ought to have known you have a disability. So if you feel reasonable adjustments may make the application process more equal and maybe consider letting people know. I'm sure many disabled people with applicants are more than capable of writing strong applications without mentioning a disability. No, not all my experiences disability focused. I know that for sure, and I know other people I would say it's disability isn't the most significant part of you, but it is a big part, and to shut that away might be to shut away experiences you can use to demonstrate skills. I would be open to talking about it, but I will say that because I'm a guy with an obvious speech impairment and having a wheelchair, so I can make my disability invisible isn't really an option.
Thank you, Daniel. Just one final question before we wrap up the event. It's quite a long question, but it's about basically if somebody's asked that, judging by the fact they have quite a difficult disability to manage and they're a mature student from a non-Russell Group University background, is this going to provide too many barriers to their entry to the bar? Will it hold them back? And how can Be the Bar and others help them, including with mentorship? So that's open to the panel, the committee, anyone who wishes to speak. Charles.
Yeah, I'd love to answer that question, or at least have a go at partially answering it. Just as a person that's a part-time doing a PhD as well, so I might be able to empathise with a little bit of what they're talking about in terms of workload and management. I found that honestly just reaching out to as many people as possible, obviously carrying on from the point that's just been raised about disclosure or how comfortable you feel about raising it. My approach is very much reflecting of Christina's earlier on about just being as honest as possible with as many people as possible and asking people for help. That's really what I've done. I just reached out via Twitter. That's an amazing place for help, or an organisation like this where you get in touch and try and get access to membership. Mentorship. And I don't really want to elaborate too much more because I'm aware of timescales, but I just want to profess the fact that I've had a overwhelmingly positive experience with help and with people that want to support me and will help me with my disability and bringing all the attention and energy that it needs. I repeat, I've got myalgic encephalomyelitis, which does affect fatigue and processing. So the bar was something I did have to consider. And thinking in terms of workload, and obviously it's quite famous as an industry for being quite demanding. But as I say, I just reached out to as many people as possible and got as many opinions and answers as possible. And I honestly feel quite enthused, and events like this really help that. So I hope that answers your question somewhat, and I'll pass it over to somebody else. Thank you.
Sorry to them. So I would like Reese and Maria to answer this question, as well. Reese as the head of scheme, so he can provide an answer, which is Be the Bar and bring visibility to the bar membership. Reese, are you able to go unmute, please?
Okay, so what was the question? I was completely out there looking at the chats.
Basically, how visibility to the bar can assist with mentorship someone who has a very challenging disability and help them succeed.
Help me, I can't hear. I can't, hang on, just 2 seconds. Can you ask Maria? I can't hear anything at the moment.
Maria, do you want to take the question?
Sure. I'll jump in, and I'll also at the same time address the comment that I think Tanya has put in the chat, which refers to this idea of tick boxes. To the person who sent in this question, I'm someone who has multiple disabilities. I'm a mature student. My academics haven't always been that great as a result either. And I think that when you're looking at the COVID situation, when you're looking at flare-ups, building on what Charles said, it is definitely about finding your community. Because, for example, through Be the Bar, I've been able to find other people I can speak to about these issues in a space where I'm heard and I don't have to necessarily explain myself from the point of view of mitigating circumstances, which can in itself present a barrier for you if you always have to think about yourself in needing to explain yourself and needed to justify why you navigate the world in a different way to someone else. So I really recommend that. Hopefully you can come to future events. You can join the committee if you want to. There will be a mentorship scheme. We're recruiting for mentors, and soon we'll be recruiting mentees as well. And to address Tanya's comment, like Zoe said in the chat, I'm really sorry that someone said that to you. And I think it's unfortunately a really clear example of the attitude that exists when it comes to thinking about diversity and equity and inclusion. We're not just jumping through hoops. We're not just trying to get, people into positions because it looks good, but it's what Judge Afzal was referencing earlier. It is intrinsic to our profession that we all be here. Without us, this profession cannot be the best it can be. It cannot serve all of our communities. And hopefully through our EDI work and through taking a more intersectional approach where we work in solidarity with non-disabled organizations as well, focusing on issues like race, gender, LGBTQ+ identities, that we can hopefully unite all of these schemes and all of these ambitions to create a more accessible bar. Because as I referenced earlier, a more accessible bar doesn't just benefit disabled people from one aspect, it benefits all people at the bar.
Thank you so much, Maria, and we absolutely agree with that. And I would like now to pass to Oscar, and then Daniel, and then we'll wrap up for tonight. Oscar?
Hi there, Constantina. I just had a question from an extra question from the chat, if I could add it in. It was for our panelists. How did you tackle repeated rejections, especially when it was obvious that such rejections came because of your disability?
Would you like to answer this question?
Yes, I'll try and amalgamate the two if you don't mind. So the previous point about disability and acknowledging it. I remember talking to someone a while ago, and I thought this was a really good way of looking at it. And he always said, you should treat your disability like supporting your football team. So for my sins, I'm a Norwich City fan, and for any of you who know the world of football, when you support a team like Norwich, you take it through the good times and the bad. And if someone asked you why you supported Norwich City, you would have to make an impassioned plea as to why you supported them. And it's a case of owning your support of something like a football team is very much like having a disability. You need to own it. You need to not necessarily be proud of it, but you need to acknowledge it. It's something that, it is real, it is tangible, and to hide away from it, I don't think is necessarily beneficial, but, own it and be proud of it and actually put it out there, because I think if you put it out there and you make it clear from the get-go, I think people will respect you for it, and you'll acknowledge that, it'll be acknowledged far greater. The second point about rejections and things like that, I suppose rejection is a fact of life, unfortunately, and I'm afraid you get rejected if you've got a disability or you haven't got a disability. I don't think you get this far in life without some kind of rejection. So my argument to that would be, just because you have a disability does not mean you're rejected anymore. It might be perhaps slightly harder to bear if it is related to your disability. But again, it relates back to the point I made before about, you need a thick skin in life. The bar is not easy. Having a disability is also not easy. But I think if you can get through those, you will come out a better person, and I think you will offer far more to the bar ultimately.
Thank you, everyone. I think this is time to wrap up the event because I think we said that we finished at 7:30. Before I pass on to James to conclude, I would like, first of all, thank all of the attendees for spending your evening with us to learn more about bringing it to the bar and hopefully how you can best support. And obviously, I would like to say huge thank you to all of our amazing 4 speakers who share their experience and also such an important advice, which I think it's quite a fuel of motivation for every aspiring barrister that is struggling at a time with all the applications for INS, back course, privilege, and everything. It's been an amazing experience. However, I want to give my biggest thanks to the Bring Disability, the bar committee, because the last 4 months have been challenging, trying to balance university and work or any other activity that each of us had to do, but we came together and formed this organization, and we have so many more exciting things. We're looking forward in order to reach our aim. So thanks to all of the 20 amazing committee members that we have, and particularly to James, Maria, Charles, and Reese. James, do you want to add something else, and then we can conclude?
Yeah, I would just like to pass on my thanks to the speakers, to the panel, to the committee, to everyone that's attended and sat through this and listened to us all, and to the really encouraging messages and feedback that we've had. I can honestly say for me that this launch has provoked tears, it's provoked joy, it's provoked excitement. Honestly, it has been so uplifting to see so many people attend, and thank you so much to the panel. You have been amazing for taking this time to speak with us. And yes, all I can finish with is one phrase, which is watch this space. Thank you.
And once I close the Zoom call, there will be a survey, which we'd like you to fill in, possibly get some feedback. And yes, thank you so much for.
Can I just spot in one thing?
Yes.
Can I just say thank you so much to Matthew Banks, who assigned to do this for us, and for his assistance for BSL interpretation. Again, another massive thank you to someone who came out of the blue for this and just messaged us and offered his assistance. So thank you to him.
Thank you, Matthew. And yes, we look forward to seeing many more of you in the next Bring Disability event and Bring Disability to the Bar events, and follow us on social media and check the website. Have a lovely evening, all of you.